Breaking news, Kevin Durant has been traded, but not to the Miami Heat. Why did the Heat fail to land Kevin Durant again? We're going to talk about that, plus why it's time for the Heat to face reality and pick a new direction.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg, a credentialed Heat media member who covers this team every day for daily content on the Heat. Click that subscribe button on YouTube. Make sure you are following us on your favorite podcast app. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. I have a great show for you today. It is day 7, or it's game 7 of the NBA Finals. Recording this on a Sunday. But the Kevin Durant news did not wait. Durant has been traded. It was reported this morning by ESPN's Shams Charania. We're going to get into what we know about how trade talks went down, how they broke down for Miami. We're going to talk about the big mistake that the Heat made that cost them a chance at Kevin Durant, and the big mistake that nobody is talking about. Then we're going to get into what comes next for the Heat this offseason. But let's start with the nuts and bolts part of the deal. The Suns have agreed to a trade to send Kevin Durant to the Houston Rockets for Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, and the number 10 pick in this year's draft, plus 5 second-round picks. And so that's the deal. That's the deal that Houston gets Kevin Durant for. The Rockets don't have to part with any of their good young players, right? You didn't hear even Jabari Smith Jr., obviously no Amen Thompson. You don't hear the names of any of the big guys no Alperen Şengün, no Reed Shepherd. They didn't have to part with any of their good stuff. And they had clearly gotten to the point with Jalen Green where, and no disrespect to Jalen Green or Dillon Brooks, but they've gotten to the point Houston has with Jalen Green where they said, you know what, we like him, but he's not good enough. And I pointed this out a lot on Locked On NBA and stuff like that, especially during the Rockets playoff run. It's when Jalen Green scored 30-plus points, this team was borderline unstoppable. I think they were like 13-2 or something in the regular season. It was crazy. They needed a guy who could score. Jalen Green was just so up and down, and they had clearly gotten to the point with him where they liked him, but would be willing, obviously, to include him in a deal for somebody like Kevin Durant, who even at 30, he'll be 37 when next year starts. When you get him for this, you just do it. And that's obviously what Houston came down to. They said, look, we're good moving on from Jalen Green at this point. I do think that this is a little bit of, well, we kind of got Jalen Green out of here too, so Amen Thompson can now be kind of our featured young guy. And it always felt like it was a little my turn, your turn with Jalen Green and Amen Thompson. And Amen Thompson was clearly the guy that you're going to want to build around as a two-way player in the moments of awesome offensive flashes for him. So like you move on from Green, you include Dillon Brooks, which is tough, good two-way player, one of their better three-point shooters, one obviously their best perimeter defender, or outside of Amen Thompson. But you get Kevin Durant and you do it. And really, again, no disrespect to Jalen Green or Dillon Brooks. All it really costs you is the number 10 pick in a draft where the Rockets were already going into feeling like they had too much. Like Reed Shepherd was a top 5 pick last year, couldn't even get on the court. So what are they really going to be doing with the number 10 pick? So they don't have to part with any of their good stuff. They're premium young pieces. None of their no future draft picks, right? Like this number 10 pick sounds valuable because it's the number 10 pick, but it doesn't become an asset as soon as you use it this week in the draft. So, there's a ticking clock on the value of this number 10 pick as of Wednesday. And Phoenix obviously was very motivated to get something done before the draft. They get a nice pick in this draft. They get a couple of young pieces. They're probably going to flip Jalen Green to another team. It would be my guess because I just like you have Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, and Bradley Beal. I don't know that makes a ton of sense for Phoenix. So can you flip Jalen Green somewhere, maybe get another piece or two back that makes more sense for what you're trying to do? Dillon Brooks fills in on the wing, and then you get to take a swing at somebody in the lottery in the top 10 of this draft if you're Phoenix. So that's where it is. But why? I know what you really want to know. Why did the Heat not get this done? That's what the Rockets traded Kevin Durant for, and the Heat couldn't beat that? Totally fair. Here's what we do know, and it's something that we've reported over and over again on this podcast. The Heat were never going to include Kel'el Ware. they never did include Kel'el Ware. That was a sticking point for Phoenix. It was a sticking point in these conversations. It was a sticking point also in February when there were brief conversations between the Suns and the Heat that would have included something like Jimmy Butler going to Phoenix for Kevin Durant coming to Miami. And there was a moment where that looked like it was a real possibility. That didn't happen because back then, Phoenix asked for Kel'el Ware and a lot of other things. But they asked for Kel'el Ware, and Miami said, no dice. We're not trading Kel'el Ware. We really like him. He's 20 years old. We're not trading him for a guy who will be 37 by the time next year. Is 36 now. Is going to be 37 years old when next season starts. And I think that's the right move, right? It hurts not getting Kevin Durant, but it's really hard to part with a young player who you really like. We don't know what Kel'el Ware's ceiling will be. We don't know how ultimately his career will play out. But it's really hard to move from a guy like that for somebody who's 37 years old, as good as Kevin Durant is, when you're talking about a team that is still, even after acquiring Kevin Durant, would still be another move or 2 or 3 moves away from seriously contending in the Eastern Conference. So I'm glad that Miami was real enough in terms of where they stand in the East to not include Kel'el Ware. By the way, the Heat are not alone in that thinking of, hey, we can't trade our good young piece for Kevin Durant. You want to know how I know that? Because the Rockets didn't move any of their good young pieces for Kevin Durant. They just moved Jalen Green. But they still have all the pieces that they really care about. So it was the right move. The Rockets weren't going to do it. The Spurs clearly did not do it. They never involved the number 2 pick. They never involved Stephon Castle. I don't even know that they ever even involved Devin Vassell in their offer either. These teams just weren't going to give up their best stuff for Kevin Durant, who you're going to have to pay, right? Now you have to talk about contract extensions. Now, if you're Houston, if you're San Antonio, if you're Miami, you felt pretty good about Durant coming back because you were on his list of preferred destinations. Durant does get to one of his preferred spots in Houston now, but it still never made any sense to put all your best stuff in an offer. So here's what we know about what the Heat did offer for Kevin Durant. They made multiple offers that included, well, let me tell you what they did not include first. They made multiple offers for Kevin Durant. They had a conversation with the Phoenix Suns about Kevin Durant on Sunday morning. These talks were ongoing over the last couple of weeks, and they were pretty much in touch daily. And Phoenix kept trying to drum up more trade interest. You heard the reporting late last week. We might hold on to him after the draft. We actually might hold on to him going into the season. This was all BS. Nobody really believed it. And it was all to drum up, to try to create leverage that they did not have. It's something we talked about all the time, right? They had a big going out of business, everything must go sign outside of the door. And then you walked in and they were still trying to charge you full price for stuff. And it just never was going to happen. And clearly Houston got Kevin Durant. Even at 37 years old, this is a discount for somebody that good. And it's the reason why David and I have kept talking about, hey, Kevin Durant is a great option for Miami this summer, regardless of what you think it makes you in the Eastern Conference. But you also can't go all in for Kevin Durant. So conversations were ongoing over the last couple of weeks. They spoke as recently as Sunday morning before they made the trade call and decided on the Rockets offer. Miami made multiple offers. They had an opportunity to get Kevin Durant. It would have cost them Jaime Jaquez Jr., Nikola Jovic, Haywood Highsmith, and the number 20 pick, plus other things, presumably a Wiggins contract. Maybe there was some scuttle about maybe a 3-team deal, perhaps involving Brooklyn. That would have sent Terry Rozier to Brooklyn. Maybe other pieces go back to Phoenix. But essentially it would have been salary filler, Jaime, Jovic, Haywood Highsmith, and the 20th pick in this draft. There was conversations about future first-round picks, multiple first-round picks. All these conversations were happening. For Miami to have had an actual chance to compete with Houston's offer, it would have been all of it. It would have been Jaime, Nico, Haywood, the 20th pick in this draft, plus salary filler. And the Heat were ultimately not willing to go all in. So I've seen this online. They weren't willing to include Haywood Highsmith. They weren't willing to include Jaime Jaquez Jr. How could they? No. They were willing to include parts of all of that. They weren't willing to include all of it. So it came down to either give us the salary filler and Kel'el Ware, and I think Duncan Robinson definitely would have been a part of this because of the nature of his contract. Phoenix could have waived it and saved a lot of money against the tax. But ultimately it was, hey, we can get the salary filler plus Kel'el Ware, and then we get the blue chip young player who we feel really good about. and we could do a deal then. Because then Houston, San Antonio, these other teams are not willing to include their blue chip young players. If you are, we can get a deal done. Had Miami included Kel'el Ware, Kevin Durant would have been traded to the Heat. I feel very strongly in that. But they were not willing to go that way. Okay? You could believe whatever you think about that is whatever you think about that. But I'm just trying to tell you what happened. They didn't go that way, so they didn't get that deal done. But they did have a chance to say, okay, you want to compete with this Houston offer. You don't want to give us Kel'el Ware? Fine. Give us everything else. Not some of it all of it. And Miami said, no, we can't give you everything. We can't give you everything. And I think that was the right call, because then you give, like I just said before, Kevin Durant is worth trading for, even at this stage. He is an awesome basketball player, still one of the best 10 scorers in the NBA, would fill a lot of needs for Miami, but not all of the needs for Miami. And if you trade for Kevin Durant, you're trying to move up in the Eastern Conference. And I thought that was step one of a multi-step process this offseason. It's something we've been on this entire time, since February, since we've been talking about Kevin Durant and potentially trading for him. He's not the answer, but he's step one in a multi-step answer. But if you trade all of this stuff for Kevin Durant, then you don't have the stuff for steps 2, 3, and 4 in filling out the rest of the roster around him. So they just couldn't do it. It's disappointing. It is emotionally disappointing. I'm disappointed. I was disappointed when the alert went off on my phone and I saw the news. Of course, we wanted Kevin Durant here. We thought it would have been just at least very fun to cover him, and it would have solved a lot of needs for Miami, but not all of Miami's needs. And they were ultimately right in not offering all of their stuff. And you look at what Houston ultimately got him for, they did not offer all of their stuff. The Suns were never going to get all of somebody's stuff for Kevin Durant. They just got a little bit of stuff, and Houston ended up with the best little bit of stuff offer here. And I think it's why the Heat need to look in the mirror now and say, why does this keep happening to us? Why is it that every time we feel like we're close to getting a star, somebody else beats us? Why can't we land these guys? Why have we not been able to pull off a trade like this since 2019? We're going to talk about that. I'm going to tell you why, and I'm going to tell you the big mistake that Miami keeps making and the one that nobody's talking about. We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Heat. Today's episode of Locked On Heat is brought to you by Olipop. Olipop is a new kind of soda made for people who love the classic taste of soda but want something that supports their health, with just 2 to 5 grams of sugar and 9 grams of prebiotic fiber in every can. Olipop is reimagining soda in a way that's better for your gut. Traditional sodas are loaded with sugar, like 39 grams in a regular Coke or 44 grams in an orange Fanta. Olipop flips that script with just a fraction of the sugar, no artificial sweeteners, and gut-friendly ingredients like OliSmart, a blend shown to support digestive and overall health. It's soda that tastes like the real thing, but actually does something good for your body. Swapping out your regular soda for Olipop can help you cut back on sugar while still getting that nostalgic flavor of soda that you love. You'll notice the difference after switching from traditional soda to Olipop, which gives you about a third of your daily recommended fiber in addition to tasting great. So get a free can of Olipop. Just buy any 2 cans in a store and they'll reimburse you for one. Head to drinkolipop.com/LockedOnNBA to claim your free can and find Olipop near you. That's drinkolipop.com/LockedOnNBA. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button on YouTube to follow us throughout the entire off season. We're going to have tons of more on the Kevin Durant front and where things go. The NBA draft is this week, first round Wednesday night. So you're going to want to make sure that you're tuning in for everything that we got going on this week and going forward. But here's where the Heat made their biggest mistake, and ultimately why they probably don't have Kevin Durant right now. Not tanking. And man, David is, I could already hear him. he wants to yell at me. He was obviously always anti-tank for a very long time, but not even to do the moral judgment of should you tank, should you not tank, is taking good, is taking bad, whatever. But it is a fact. Not tanking probably certainly cost them a better pick in this draft. Now, we all know, hey, had they tanked, would they have been the team in the slot that the Dallas Mavericks were in? Could they have soared up in the NBA draft lottery to the number 1 pick and had an opportunity to take Cooper Flagg here? Possibly. Now, as I've told people before, the odds would not have been exactly the same. It's very, very complicated. But certainly they would have had a chance to move up in the draft. And they didn't, because instead of tanking at the end of the year, when they have an opportunity to perhaps even get 9th, 10th, 11th best odds in the lottery. Definitely if they had just lost in the play-in tournament, not won 2 straight games on the road, they would have had the 14th best odds in the lottery. They would have been in the lottery. And either way, they would have had a better pick than where they are now at 20. Could they have gotten this deal over the top if they could include a lottery pick, whether it's 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, instead of the 20th pick? Houston moved the 10th pick. That has to be a possibility. Had they been able to include a lottery pick instead of a pick in the bottom 10 of the NBA of the first round, could they have gotten this deal over the top? Would that have helped them? Not tanking is a tough look, especially considering how you were so grossly outplayed in the first round, swept, dominated in the first round by the Cavaliers. And I'll say this, at least you know now if you're the Heat, right? Because even they, coming off of those 2 road wins in the play-in tournament, they were talking about, hey, can we make a run? Can we actually, we're not scared of this Cavs team. Like, we beat them, and who knows what we've made it through the play-in tournament to the NBA Finals before. We could do it. We could show everybody we don't need Jimmy Butler here. All of that conversation was happening. And then afterwards, at the end of the season, Eric Spoelstra said, hey, we were irrationally confident. And I'm glad that they've gone from irrational to, I hope now, perhaps rational. Irrational doesn't get you anywhere. You got to be rational. And the Heat have to face reality in this stuff. And the decision to make that push after the 10-game losing streak, that decision to make the push and try to make the playoffs and all that, as valiant as it was, as honorable as it was, it cost you a chance at a lottery pick. It cost you a chance at perhaps moving up in the lottery and ending up with a top pick in a draft that is very highly regarded, whether it was Cooper Flagg or who knows, right? Maybe you get Dylan Harper at the 2nd pick. Maybe you have a chance to take Ace Bailey or Trey Johnson or any of these guys at the top. Nope. VJ Edgecombe, nope. Instead, they're sitting there with 20. And no real asset to move of value in conversations with the Phoenix Suns. Outside of, we've got this Duncan Robinson contract that's 50% guaranteed. We have a couple of young players who you might like. We can't include all of them, and we can't give you Kel'el Ware. So at the end of the day, there was just nothing in the offer that Houston could point to and be like, at least we've got that. Where in the Houston package, they could say, at least we got the 10th pick in this draft. Miami couldn't even give them something close to that. The 20th pick, nobody's banging pots and pans for the 20th pick in the draft. 10th pick in the draft, hey, we got a top 10 pick. That's something. Miami couldn't offer anything outside of luxury cap relief. And that's still why I thought maybe they could get it done. And if Kevin Durant had said Miami, maybe they still get it done. But at the end of the day, they just didn't have that thing. And you've got to wonder, had they just tanked, what does that pick look like? It's certainly better than 20. It's definitely in the top 14. How close to 10 could it have been? Could it have been better than 10? Had it been better than 10, would they have even included it? Or are we looking at a different kind of timetable where they say, you know what, we ended up with one of the top 3 or 4 picks in this draft. We don't even need Kevin Durant because now we feel really good about where we're at in terms of our talent acquisition. We're going to go get one of these top young players. So it cost them a chance at a big move this offseason. We'll talk a little bit more a little bit later about what this means for Miami going forward. But the other big mistake that Miami made, and this is going back a couple of years now, they don't have second-round picks. Again, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, 10th pick in the draft. The other part in this draft, 5 second-round picks going to Phoenix. A Phoenix team that is so depleted of all of their picks that even getting 5 second-round picks over the next 7 years rebuilds their stash of second-round draft capital. And you might go, who cares, second-round picks, whatever. Teams buy second-round picks all the time. It's not about actually selecting players in the second round. It's about having those things to grease the wheels on trades. And I've, again, been talking about this for years. Second-round picks are the things that get these trades over the top time and time and time again. I've done it before. I won't do it now. But you go back and look at trade deadline deals and how many of these include second-round picks. They are the cash of the NBA. They are the thing that gets the deal over the top. They grease the wheels. They sweeten the deal on every trade, it seems like. 90% of trades include at least 1 second-round pick. And the Heat have very little second-round picks. They could trade 2 second-round picks. Some of them are protected, flipping, swaps, and all the complicated stuff. They don't have 5 second-round picks to include in a deal. They don't have anything close to it. And I've been calling this out for years because they're using their second-round picks instead of greasing the wheels on trades to make the team better. They have used them to dump KZ Okpala, to dump Victor Oladipo, to dump these players who they take a swing on, and then they've traded a bunch for KZ Okpala, and then had to use a bunch to dump KZ Okpala. They have wrongly valued second-round picks, Miami has, over the last several years. While the NBA is valuing them as currency, they're looking as ways to improve their team. Miami is looking at them as a way to just reduce the financial strain on payroll or duck a tax or do whatever, clear a roster spot. And that's been the wrong way to use them. And they've had to use them to correct mistakes. The KZ Okpala thing was a mistake. Victor Oladipo, that was a mistake, right? They spun their wheels on the Oladipo thing for 3 years. It never bore fruit. So the fact that they don't have these second-round picks, the fact that they did not tank, they just don't have the draft capital to get it done. And at the end of the day, the Heat just don't have what it takes to get any of these deals done. And the opportunities to steal star players for next to nothing, whether it's Kevin Durant, Damian Lillard, whatever, have not worked. And when they could literally steal these star players for basically nothing, whether it was James Harden or Kyrie Irving, they decided, not for us. So they've been trying to do this Three Little Bears thing of, well, we love this star player. He's right for our culture, but we don't want to trade anything for him. But we don't want these star players because they're not right for our culture, even though we could probably get them for nothing. They've wanted the perfect star player for the perfect outgoing trade package that didn't cost them anything. And you just can't do that in today's NBA. You can't do it. You can't do it. Even the Lakers, who got Luka Doncic for base, they still had to trade Anthony Davis. They still had to trade a highly valued future first-round pick unprotected. Wasn't a good trade. Terrible trade for Dallas. The Lakers still had to give up their second-best player and a draft pick that they did not want to part with for years. Miami will not part with anything, and they want everything back. And this is the mistake they keep making. They made it time after time in the Jimmy Butler era when they kept trying to add another star to him. And they made it again now with Kevin Durant. It's not to say that they should not have chased Kevin Durant. I am so happy that this trade at least got done before the draft so that Miami could chart their course for the rest of this offseason. But if they keep trying to do it this way, they're not going to get done what they want to get done. They're not going to get that third star player to add to Bam Adebayo and Tyler Herro. If they keep trying to do it this way, they won't do it. And it's not to say that they got to move everything, but they've got to figure out a way to either trade the stuff that it's going to take if you're that desperate to get the star player, or add things to the roster, add things to your draft asset collection. They need to figure out ways to improve their asset collection. Because if they keep trying to steal these perfect star players for next to nothing, they're going to keep being left with an empty bag while the star goes somewhere else. So what do the Heat do now? We're going to talk about what comes next for the Heat this offseason next here on Locked On Heat. Today's episode of Locked On Heat is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. And managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. We'll be right back. So what do the Heat do now? Let's talk about some names and then talk about some other options. The names. DeMar DeRozan is the backup plan. We know this. 2 years left on his contract. His contract virtually it's a little bit less than the Andrew Wiggins contract. Could you do a swap? Something that we've proposed here on Locked On Heat a couple of times. Do you just do a straight swap, Wiggins for DeRozan? Feels like it. solves needs for both teams. Sacramento is not in need of scoring. They've got Sabonis, they got Levine. They kind of just need a two-way wing who can just fill the gap. Whereas Miami needs somebody who could score. They need a guy who can get a bucket. DeRozan certainly is that, even at this stage of his career. It's obviously not Kevin Durant. It's obviously a little bit of a disappointment to go to that, from that to this. But I do think it's worth kicking the tires on. We know that Miami checked in on DeRozan, tried to figure out a way to add DeRozan to Jimmy Butler and Bam and Tyler Herro last summer. Couldn't figure out a way to get that done. DeRozan ultimately lands in Sacramento. Could they circle back around to DeRozan? I think there will be conversations between Miami and Sacramento about DeMar DeRozan. We'll see where that ends up. I've been talking a little bit with Matt George, who's the host of Locked On Kings, about what Sacramento might want in that kind of deal. We actually might get together for a crossover pod later on in this week, so keep an eye out for that if we can figure out a time and a schedule for it. But DeMar DeRozan, at least a name worth keeping an eye on, but not the only name in Sacramento. Malik Monk is also a name that's been out there. The Kings now, it feels like they could be shopping DeRozan, and they could try to find what the market is for Malik Monk. I've always liked Malik Monk's game. You wish that he was more efficient, that the shooting percentages followed up some of the big flashes that he has. Malik Monk is not Kevin Durant. He's not a top 10 player. I don't even know if he's a starter on a high level team. You know, he might be a awesome sixth man, but he's a very good scorer. Perhaps that's something that's out there. Does Miami call Phoenix now about Jalen Green? Probably not, but he's a name that's out there now. Now that he's moved from Houston, he's a name that it feels like Phoenix is going to flip him to another team. And if they do decide to do that, I don't know. It's just a name. It's out there. Thought I should mention it. And the other name that's been reported and stuff like that, Jonathan Kuminga. Is Miami going to look at Kuminga in a sign and trade? I'm not sure I'm buying the Jonathan Kuminga noise. Miami did their due diligence on Kuminga before the trade deadline, obviously, before sending Jimmy Butler to Golden State. Kuminga could have probably been a part of that package had Miami really insisted. Perhaps it certainly could have been a part of that package if Miami had done a deal earlier in the season instead of being out-leveraged as the trade deadline got closer in February. But I don't know after the due diligence if Kuminga is something that they want to do, all the jumping through the hoops of the sign and trade and stuff like that. But look, Golden State has to make a decision on him. We'll see what happens there. Maybe there's a deal that just makes sense. Maybe there's a situation Miami is able to move. I don't think Miami would move their best stuff for Jonathan Kuminga. So we'll see. I've seen the name reported out there. I'm not sure I'm buying it, but it's worth keeping an eye on. Other than that, looks like Giannis is staying in Milwaukee. We have not heard anything about what's coming out of Memphis. Jaren Jackson Jr., Ja Morant. What are they going to do now? Memphis continues to signal, hey, just because we traded Desmond Bane does not mean we're trading these guys. Okay, those guys are up for extensions. Until you sign them to an extension, I'm going to make a phone call. If I'm a team that actually wants one of these guys. If you're Miami, maybe you call. Maybe you call about Ja Morant. Maybe you call about Jaren Jackson Jr. and say, hey, are you serious? Or is there a price here? And if it's a Desmond Bane type of price, maybe you don't do it. But I don't know. You make the phone call if you're Miami. But ultimately, again, they just don't really have the stuff to make these big swings, to get the big name, to get the big star. And so maybe it does, the right move, maybe it does look something closer to what it looks like with like a Jonathan Kuminga, a distressed asset, unquestioned talent. Could you go get a distressed asset, refurbish that player, maximize that player? We just saw what the Indiana Pacers have done. We're, again, recording this a couple hours before Game 7 here. But just by getting to Game 7 in the NBA Finals, this is such a win. And proof of concept for how the Pacers have built their team. Second draft guys, Tyrese Halliburton, Obi Toppin coming off the bench, Aaron Nesmith, buried on Boston's depth chart before Indiana traded for him basically for nothing. Are there guys like that that are out there that you could go get? Distressed assets who you can maximize. And maybe the next thing you know, you have a needle-moving type of player. Whether it's at the Tyrese Halliburton level or even the Obi Toppin level. Miami just doesn't have those kinds of players. And if you can go find those players, then you could start either building around those players or using those players to go get a star player. Imagine if Miami had an Aaron Nesmith and an Obi Toppin on their roster right now. That another team that could talk themselves into and get excited about. They just don't have those guys. The league doesn't know what to make of Nikola Jovic. The league doesn't know what to make of Jaime Jaquez Jr. after his sophomore slump. The league likes Kel'el Ware, but you can't move Kel'el Ware for Kevin Durant. The Heat don't really have any things that anybody really wants. So I think you have to ask yourself, if you're Miami going forward, how can we go get those things? How can we build up our asset base? Do we have to seriously look at trading somebody for draft picks, taking that step back to potentially take a big step forward later on, a calculated step back? They can obviously wait for 2026 where they're going to have a bunch of cap space, but there's going to be a lot of teams with a lot of cap space. But, not every Miami. I don't know what the free agent class looks like. Kevin Durant's not going to be a free agent. He's going to sign an extension in Houston. We'll see what happens on Luka Doncic and all these other things. But that's at least another option here, is that you just sort of maybe move some deck chairs around and wait for 2026. I think you can do all these things. I think you can take swings on other players, on distressed assets, try to rebuild the roster and create a new asset base. I'm waiting for 2026. I think there's a way that you could do both. But the other question here that has to be asked, and this could be something we explore in another episode, but it has to be asked here. Do other teams start calling Miami? The word is out. The narrative, the national narrative, is that Miami is stuck in who they are. 3 straight years in the play-in tournament, no Jimmy Butler. They could not get Kevin Durant. We don't know the next star player that's going to shake loose now. The national narrative is that Miami's stuck. Do other teams start calling Miami about Bam and Tyler Herro? Both of those players would help a lot of teams. And if some team comes knocking with a Desmond Bane type of package for one of those guys, where you could flip one of them for multiple first-round picks, a couple of good young players, helpful rotation pieces, whatever it might be, but you take a major step back, but a calculated one in order to try to take a step forward, Miami just doesn't have the assets. Phoenix had to do it just now. They had to trade Kevin Durant. They took a loss on the trade, but they got a first-round pick. They got multiple second-round picks. They got a young player in Jalen Green. They got a helpful rotation piece in Dylan Brooks. It was the best that they could do. They did not get fair value for Kevin Durant, but they got the best value, they got the best package that they could get. And it resets their clock, and it helps them rebuild around Devin Booker. And they actually have now at least chosen a direction. And for Miami, we don't know what the direction is. And if they have to do anything this offseason, it's picking that direction. Is it going to be the step back to take a step forward? Is it going to be just holding and waiting until 2026? Or is there another star trade out there that they can make? Or are there distressed assets that are out there that can make? Or do they say, you know what? We think Bam and Tyler Herro both can make another leap. Let's go surround them with a better supporting cast. Maybe we do depth. Maybe depth is the answer for us. And we just, instead of chasing another star, we just get really deep. Maybe that's how they decide to move things around this summer. But they have to make a decision, and they have to pick a direction. So, look, I'm glad that the Kevin Durant trade is done. I'm disappointed that he's not playing for Miami, but I'm glad that they did not go all in. That's my opinion. I'm glad they didn't throw everything. I'm disappointed they didn't get it done, but I'm also happy that they stuck to their guns. They didn't trade everything that it was going to take to get Kevin Durant. My issue with Miami is not that they didn't move everything for Kevin Durant. It's the mistakes that led them to this point. They just don't have the assets. They don't have the stuff. And my ask now from the Heat is, figure that part out. Figure it out. Jimmy Butler's not here anymore. The championship window is closed. How do you reopen it? And how do you get to a point where when the next star becomes available, you can be in position to make that move? And that was my biggest issue with how they handled the Jimmy Butler trade, is they didn't even get this stuff for Jimmy Butler. You ended up with the 20th pick in the draft, guys, and Andrew Wiggins. And Davion Mitchell, who came over in another part of that trade. Nice piece. Not under contract right now. So you couldn't move him in part of a package. But my biggest thing, when you traded Jimmy Butler, it needed to set you up to make a move for Kevin Durant or the next star, and they failed in that. They lost the Jimmy Butler trade. They had to trade him, obviously, because Jimmy Butler was doing this Jimmy Butler thing. But that's the biggest disappointment, is that, hey, we traded Jimmy Butler and we still didn't get the stuff that we needed to get Kevin Durant. And that's probably the biggest L that the Heat are facing right now. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On NBA Big Board. NBA draft expert Rafael Barlow reacts to every workout, interview, and rumor leading up to the NBA draft. Find Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.